Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Utopia podcast. I am Chris, and alongside me is Tommy. Tommy, how's it going?
Pretty good. I'm slowly starting to see a lot of people finally pulling themselves away from the edge of the cliff, it seems.
The demo for NCAA Football 10 is out, but before we get to our demo impressions, we want to touch on a few issues that we talked about on the show last week. There are a couple issues with the game that the NCAA Football development team is working on to get resolved as soon as possible. First being the rosters, that's the real big one. We found out that there will be a file in the EA locker with the updated correct roster file. That'll be there at the release date, so make sure as soon as you get the game, go into EA locker, download that roster file. Eventually there will be a patch of some sort that will allow you to take this roster file online, but initially you will not be able to play any online plain out games with this new correct roster file. We also talked last week about downloadable content, these Dynasty accelerators that could be used to help you in Dynasty mode achieve features such as unlocking a pipeline state where you could select one early. A lot of community concern about you being able to use that in an online Dynasty.
From what I've read, it sounds like it's going to be an on-off option for, I assume, for each individual online Dynasty.
And the third issue is something that emerged just in the last 24 hours from the point of recording this show. Operation Sports received a preview copy of the game, and in some very unique AI versus AI games, there was a lot of concern about the pass rush. They started posting videos with these sliders set at very extreme levels. There was no pass rush. The community was in a big uproar last night about this, on Wednesday night about this, and now we find out that the NCAA Football team is working on these sliders, make sure that they have more of an effect on the game. Before we get into our demo impressions, Tommy, what are your quick thoughts on those three issues?
Well, the roster issue, them having them out in the EA locker on day one, that's a big thing. That will allow people to start playing, go ahead and play with their teams, go ahead and start tinkering around, or as well, if they're ready to start an online Dynasty on day one, then they can go ahead and get that started as soon as they're ready to. Do hope, and I kind of request out to Russ and the rest of the developers that maybe they can share a spreadsheet or something of all the rosters with the community before we actually have the game in our hands, just to give us a reference as to what we'll actually be experiencing. As for the downloadable content, I'm one that I never had a big problem with it. I spend probably way too much time with the game anyways from week to week, so I could go in there and I would have an advantage over the next guy who works 60 hours a week. So, if he wants to pay a little bit of money to catch up with me, then that's fine with me. And then as far as the gameplay sliders, we'll have to kind of get some more information as far as what all is going to be affected. But definitely they need to be more effective, especially in terms, comparing to 09, the pass rush, even if you set it to 0, there still wasn't a significant pass rush. So hopefully we get some more information on that as time goes on.
Well, the demo is out. Everyone, I'm sure we're waiting patiently for their systems to download it. Tommy, I know you've been able to play a couple games with it. I've only been able to play one with my slow download times out here. Give me some of your quick demo impressions that we go through a couple issues. The first one being, what did you think of the pass rush, not only your own, but also the computer pass rush?
In general, it felt very similar to what you and I played at the community day. It wasn't anything completely different, but they did add and improve upon some things that we saw. The pass rush, the problem I had at the community day, and I haven't tested this in the demo yet, I haven't had enough time with it, but at the community day, you could sit in the pocket. If you did not touch your joystick at all, the rush wouldn't get to you, but then the moment you tried to break left or right, the rush could get there quicker. I have been sacked plenty in the handful of games that I've played with the demo, so I would say that there's definitely a pass rush there. If it's ideal, I wouldn't say that. I will say that the computer, in terms of the pass rush getting to the computer quarterback, that the computer makes too quick of a decision. So in that regard, it seems like there's no pass rush playing against the computer, but I think the pass rush towards the human opponent will be a much better representative of what we want to see.
The demo is a pretty close build to the final version. We know there are a few differences that producer Adam Thompson has talked about. Let's talk about a couple of those real quick. Some of the tackle animations have been toned down. What do you think about the new ones that we have seen so far in the demo?
Well, they look really good. I mean, some of the animations are just really pop out at you. You see players falling different ways. You see guys just simply trying to knock a player out of bounds instead of trying to actually make the tackle, which, it happens every day. You don't care if you tackle the guy. You just want to make sure that the play stops. Different animations, from tackling to my favorite is the over-the-shoulder catch to where the receiver leans leans his head out. It makes the passing game a lot better, just that small animation that they've added.
One thing off the bat that people are noticing and talking about are the new camera angles that are in the game. These are kind of a dynamic camera angle and presentation camera angles, as they call it, where you see after the play, it kind of goes down to the players. What do you think about these new angles that we have this year?
Well, it definitely takes some getting used to, going from 09 to 10 for the actual gameplay camera angle. It's kind of, I think it's set up a little bit higher. I'm not sure exactly, but it's set up a little bit higher, and it gives you a different view of the field. I think once everybody starts to get used to it, they'll appreciate it. As far as the actual, I guess, television camera angles that we're seeing, I like those a lot. They kind of bring you into the game, especially after a touchdown. I know that on 09, it seemed as though the camera was almost sitting on the middle of the field, zoomed in on the player, which obviously you're never going to have a camera sitting in the middle of the field. On 10, you kind of see a much better and a tighter shot of that player and doing his celebration.
There are a couple of unique items that have kind of popped out in the demo, going back to this not being quite the final build. Two of the quick ones are an issue that it seems like the PS3 users are having more than the 360 users, which is the ball sailing over the quarterback's head, and also some clock issues. These are items that we know the clock issues have been fixed in the final build. We'll talk about these real quick. That way, in case people are running into them, they know that it's an issue that's definitely known about.
For the play clock, anytime you get a first down, I'm not sure if it just never stops or starts, or only if it's when you run no huddle, but the game clock won't start even though the play clock is ticking down. And then as well, the computer won't use the game clock to their advantage. So, they may need to score a quick touchdown, but they'll still run it down to 5 seconds. Adam Thompson has already said that that's been fixed in the final build. As far as the ball sailing over the quarterback's head, that's something that we haven't seen any comments on. That's just something we've discovered later in the evening tonight, but we're hoping that that's not in the final build. But essentially what happens is the ball sails over the quarterback's head. He thinks he's caught it, but as soon as the ball lands on the ground, then the play is whistled dead as though it was an incomplete pass.
Let's talk about an issue. This is one that I've been harping on and talking about for probably the first time we heard about it, the pursuit angles in the game. Initially, I thought this was probably the most underrated aspect of the additions made to NCAA Football 10, and I believe they made a lot of gameplay additions, but I think this is the one big one that I think was kind of underrated, flying under the radar. After having now played the demo a couple games, seeing this in action in a near final build state, what do you think about them?
They are wonderful. Not only does pursuit angles cover the guy that's chasing down a guy that's running down the sidelines, not only does it cover that, not only does it cover a guy on a stretch play to the outside, but it also covers the receiver that catches a pass over the middle. On 09, you would kind of see the defender run almost parallel to the guy and not actually make that tackle. On the demo for 10, you see the guy almost immediately make that tackle as soon as he has that open window. It definitely limits a lot of plays so that there's not those huge wide open gameplay 70-yard dump passes that go for 70 yards down the field. It's made a drastic improvement just from what we've seen so far.
Have you had much time to look at or use the game planning aspect that's new to NCAA Football 10? And if so, what have you thought of it so far?
I like it a lot. It's going to cater to different people for different reasons. I mean, I'm a guy that I don't care if my halfback gets 20 yards a carry. I just want him to get those 3 yards a pop and then fall down. That's fine. So I can tell my halfback to make sure that he holds on to the ball. Don't worry about breaking long runs or anything like that. And then as well, I don't care if my guy's going to cause forced fumbles. So I'll set my defense tackling to conservative so that they make sure to wrap up the tackle instead of trying to strip out that ball. It's gonna, like I said, it's gonna cater to different people for different reasons. And you'll see guys that they don't care if they have 5 fumbles this game. They had 500 yards pass, or 500 yards rushing or whatever it is. So it definitely will be intriguing to see how people use this year.
Overall, the impressions for the demo, I think, have been pretty positive. On Wednesday night, the community was pretty down after seeing some of these videos at Operation Sports of the AI versus AI, the lack of the pass rush. But once the demo got into the community's hands, the impressions, the attitude just seemed to do a complete change, which has been great to see. And with that, we'll wrap up this edition of the Utopia podcast. But before we do, Tommy, as of June 19th, how many days away are we from the release of NCAA Football 10? Now that we have this demo, we're ready for the full version. When's it coming?
You're going to have to wait about 25 days as it is right now. It's still more than 3 weeks. I mean, we're getting closer and closer, but it seems like the closer we get, the slower time seems to go. So, folks, you're going to have to play the demo about 100 more times before you actually get to play the game, it seems.
So with that, I'm Chris. Tommy, thanks for coming on. Everyone, thanks for listening to this edition of the Utopia podcast.